is a legend of one man who persuaded his friends to watch every Godzilla movie ever made. This world is on the brink of destruction. We need you now, Godzilla evangelists. Godzilla Evangelists, a Geek Stew Network podcast, produced and hosted by Ryan Sargent, featuring Sam Schlenker and Joanna Brodecki. Hello, Godzilla Evangelists. Before we get started today, I just wanted to give you another reminder about our upcoming live show on November 4th in Los Angeles. We'll have more details and early tickets up soon, but in the meantime, mark your calendars. Get those plane flights if you're really a big fan. We'll have a lot of fun stuff planned, including merch, music, opportunities for audience participation, so you're going to want to be there. Get excited. But today, dear listeners, I'm here with my sister Lauren again.
Hello.
Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back as the official Minya advocate and sidekick to Godzilla Evangelist.
Yes, I mean, I need someone else to advocate for Minya with me, after all. Well, as the title of this episode says, today we're talking Godzilla video game. Mario is not in.
But well, they made a Mario and Godzilla collab. I forgot to tell you.
I would love that. There's been so many Godzilla games by now, most of them not actually being very good, but we're going to focus on 3 generally well-liked games, all from different eras, genres. We're trying to cover a broad spectrum of what Godzilla's been in. So we're talking about the Movie Monster game by Epix from 1986, Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee by Pipeworks from 2002, and Godzilla Battle Line by Now Productions from 2021. Now, I forced you to play a lot of Destroy All Monsters Melee back in the day.
You did.
What are your memories of this?
I would say I have 2 foundational memories from the time when you were really into playing this on GameCube. One of which was like a very common memory. There's like a running story in our family where Ryan really loves to have you play games with him. Sometimes it's a little bit easier sell. I have a harder time with board games, which is another one of his passions. But honestly, when it came to Destroy All Monsters, that was something I was a little more likely to go along with and play, even though it wasn't fully in my interest. I'm a video game person. I am a gamer girl, if you will. So it did have some draws. I remember losing miserably every time, though. I would say that's the other thing that I don't think I won a single time. And if you are a Smash Bros. Player, if you're any kind of fighting game player, you know that game is fun if you have a fighting chance. And the first 5 times you're losing, just being KO'd over and over again, you're like, all right, I'm kind of enjoying this. After that, it's like, what am I actually here to do? Am I here to be beat up?
I'm sorry. We'll get more into the specifics of that game later, but I that was the one I knew we played the most.
Yes.
So I wanted to check in on that. And so we're going to be giving these games a brief evaluation. This isn't going to be an in-depth review or anything like that, but we'll be judging on their concept, aesthetics, fun, highlights and lowlights, and their minyosity.
Now that I can give lots of feedback on.
Yes, how related they are to Minya. All right, so we're going to get right into it, starting with the Movie Monster game. This came out in 1986 for the Apple II and Commodore 64 computers. And it was the first, or at least one of the first, licensed games in America that had Godzilla in it. He was the only licensed monster. So you have Godzilla, and then you have a bunch of like rip-off monsters. Like you have Spectra, the giant wasp, instead of Mothra. You have the Glog instead of the Blob.
That's my boy right there. I love the Glog.
the idea with the movie monster game is kind of fun because it has like a theater aesthetic. I guess this is the concept and the aesthetics all in one, but whatever. It's like you go into a theater and you pick who's starring in the movie and what you're gonna do. And then before you start playing, there's this text crawl in the theater where you see like the intro of how the monster got there and what they want. And there's even like ads for food and other games that Epic's made. What did you think of the concept / aesthetics for this one?
Out of the 3 games we played, this was the most charming. I think that framing of you're in a theater, this is a movie, and you get to be the player is very cool. We also looked at the manual as well, and the way they were selling it was just so entertaining. And you could tell the people who made this game were very passionate about making it immersive and really cared for monsters. Although I did not like the mention of Godzilla's loose skin.
Okay. Hold on, we have to open this up so you can be specific about what this was.
Yes. So I think besides the framing being really charming, the writing is very well done. It's very descriptive. I would love to meet the person who wrote both the manual and the text crawls because they were really well done.
Yeah, they cared. Okay, so this is the sentence that disturbed us in the manual. In this movie, you're the monster. You're the star of the show. Take Godzilla, for example. Step into Godzilla's ample skin. That's right. Just pull it on. There. How does it feel? A little loose? You'll grow into it.
I just want to know why.
This is so unappealing.
I get what they're going for. They're like, you get to be the star. You are the monster.
Right. But they get
Why
too
can't
physical
it fit me
about it. It's like Godzilla has been flayed and his wet skin is laying on the
scalped him.
floor.
I don't know.
But yeah, the manual's great. And this is, long abandoned, so you can download all this for free. And it has these great line drawings of all the monsters. The Glog looks like Meatwad from Aqua Teen Hunger Force in the manual. They have a Megatron ripoff called Mechatron. Yeah, it's incredibly charming, and that's the biggest sell of it for sure. But I like it. It's kind of Rampage-esque in the concept, and that it's like, oh, it's a throwback and you're just going to destroy the buildings. I would say on like a minute-to-minute basis, it's less fun than Rampage. It doesn't hold up quite as well, but I think as long as you're like patient.
Patient is key. I'm going to say our experience, the fun meter was definitely dampened by this being played on an emulator. There was a point where I was the Glog and something got so mixed up in the emulator that I was going below the speed that this small creature should ever go. But if you are into the concept, I think you're more than willing to be patient for your little creature, for Godzilla to stomp across the screen.
Yeah, you got to be patient, and you got to expect that you're not going to get like hours and hours of entertainment out of it. If you're really devoted, like maybe you'll get like 3 solid hours of fun out of it. But it feels very slow, and the monsters have no more than 3 actions each. So it's not like they're super distinct. It's mainly in the aesthetics and like how fast they move is the main difference. So, and I guess how much health they have, but we had infinite health on, so we didn't really get to
We're there for the fun experience, fun mode.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's not a whole lot of variety. One thing they did do that I like is there's 5 different modes. So there's the one you might expect, which is, I think it's literally called Rampage, where you just destroy as much as you can before you run out of health, and you're judged on that. But they also have one where you have to find a specific landmark in the city and destroy it as quickly as possible.
The tourism mode. As I was explaining to our parents earlier, it's like you came to these specific towns. They're iconic towns. I like to frame it as the monsters are going on a vacation. They came to see and conquer Paris, Tokyo, London. Landmark.
Or as We had a lot of fun with you playing the blob in another mode, which was the lunch mode.
Yes, he was lunching,
Yes.
dining, and
Because you
whining in
picked
Paris.
Paris. So it was like he had taken a romantic getaway to check out the Paris food scene. And that's a little bit more interesting because apparently all the different monsters like the different like units and cars in the game differently. So you have to figure out what their favorite food is and get them fed. But probably... Oh, and then the least interesting one is called Escape, where you literally just have to get to the edge of the map.
The walking simulator,
you could just
which is very painful in a game where you're walking so slow.
Exactly.
It's more of like a jaunt than an escape.
You can ignore everything and just hold in one direction and just slowly walk off the screen.
Something we all wish we could do sometimes, our own escape.
Some of the, I guess, the two most interesting ones are the Destroy the Landmark one, and then the last mode, which is called Search, where they actually went to the trouble of giving every monster their own unique baby. So they all have their own child with a sprite, and you have to go looking for them and find them in the city. They'll occasionally call for you, and you have to like see how close you can get and guess where the building is. So that's fun, A, because of like the unique babies, and B, because at least there's more of an objective to it, what you're doing.
Oh, that definitely had the draw for me as a casual player and someone who enjoys monsters from afar. It's like they reached into my brain and handcrafted something that would interest me. It is very unexpected. I wouldn't think monster fans are going to go play this game and be like, yeah, let me find that offspring. Let me get those babies. But I love that. Each of them are uniquely made. They're not just straight up copies of the parents.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as I'm sure we're getting to here, Minya is our offspring for Godzilla. He is there, he is present, and he is even more worm-like than ever before.
You described him as monkey-like.
Okay,
when you
yeah,
first
he's
saw
monkey-like, but he's very squat.
Well, Minya's always squat. That's
He's
what's
squat.
perfect.
He's like maybe 2 pixels. 2 charming little pixels of a
He is
baby.
very small. And both him and Godzilla are brown for some reason.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. But it's cute. You see him jump up and down, and his little eyes blink. And then Mr. Meringue has to go find his little cream puff.
Oh.
And the Mechatron one is almost the most adorable because in the text crawl before you start, it's not actually his baby, because a baby robot can't have a baby, right?
Who says? That's very reductive of you.
Traditionally, a robot can't have a baby.
I'll accept that.
So they have it that they're actually trying to duplicate Mechatron because he escaped from their lab. So they have a tiny Mechatron, but Mechatron's programming is messed up. So he thinks the tiny version of him is his son, which is hilarious and adorable.
That's so human for a robot. Good for you, Mechatron, stepping up.
Yes. So I would say we have a high Minyosity. Not only does Minya appear, but there's an entire mode.
The narrative surrounds him. It acknowledges him as the rightful child of Godzilla, which is something that there isn't much contention within my imaginary fandom of Godzilla. I'm sure everyone's like, Godzilla Jr., that is the true offspring. Everyone finds that one more cute.
Mm-hmm.
But I like this. This really validates me and my idea of the family tree. And it's meaningful for him to look for his little Minya.
That's right. His little man, yeah.
Minya. That's right.
So in terms of the highlights and lowlights and would we recommend it or not, what it comes down to for me is that there's a lot of charming stuff in it, especially if you read the manual. And because that was a big part of like games back before the late 90s, right? Because most of the story was in the manual and you had to read it to get a sense of it. So if you read that and you play it, it's quite joyful, and it's fun to look back on this forgotten era of Godzilla gaming. And yeah, like Lloyd said, there's a lot of passion for what they're doing. They're like, we're making the first game where you're a giant monster, except maybe Rampage. I'm not sure if Rampage came out before this.
We're gonna need a fact check on that one.
Yeah, we're gonna need a quick fact check. But even the manual has like movie recommendations.
Oh yeah, that was very interesting. Which I would love to open like Baldur's Gate manual, and it's like, go watch Dungeons and Dragons in the theaters like that. You just would not expect that anymore. But it's again done with such love and care. These are people who looked at the source material. It's referential, and they have a deep care for it.
Yeah, and it's not dismissive like a lot of things. It's like, you won't believe how silly this movie looks. It's like they're like they just want you to have fun with it. So I would definitely recommend you give it a shot. If you have a very low attention span, maybe not, and just know it won't last long. But you could get it for free, so why not?
Do I get to recommend it too?
Yes, of course.
As a casual viewer, I don't expect any plebeian non-Godzilla evangelists off the street to go through the effort of downloading an emulator, but I have an odd proposal where I could see this be an amazing arcade cabinet. Imagine walking up to this in an arcade and it works past a snail's pace. I would play it. I would come back to play it repeatedly, do all the modes if this was set up for me in a very accessible way. I think that I would recommend it for the charming framing of it and the different modes and the fact that it has a true licensed Godzilla in it. And of course, Minya, if you are a fan, I think that this is a very unique experience and different from other Godzilla programming that you would see, as you'll come to find out. Continue.
so formal Godzilla programming.
It's multimedia experience.
This would be ripe for a remake. It'd be a lot of fun. Updated. But next, we got probably the one most people are like, yeah, pumping their fists for, which is Destroy All Monsters Melee, which was on the GameCube and Xbox. And Pipeworks would go on to put out 2 other games, which are basically the same as this, except they would put more and more monsters in, and they would get buggier and buggier because they would spend less time on them. And the graphics would be increasingly out of date because the graphics are basically the same in all 3 of the games. So that's not meant to be totally dismissive. If you like one of the later 2, like, more power to you. I like the first one partially because of nostalgia. That was the first one I played, and partially because it is like the smoothest, like the least goes wrong. It has the shortest loading times of all the games. So as like a clean, pure experience, I don't mind missing out on like 10 or so monsters to go with this. But I do miss some of them. I always like playing as Mothra because everybody knows Mothra is one of my favorites, and Mogura just because of the weird sounds and movements he made. He was the Rob of that game.
Oh my god.
And then of course Baragon was on the second one, which is
okay. See, I'm just hearing news of this, that there are further versions. We only owned growing up the original.
No, we had all 3.
Oh, well, I guess I had escaped gaming at that point and you did not have any flavors because the draw is there. If it had more monsters that I was invested in, I might be more willing to put more time in it. I understand the bugginess could make it a less enjoyable experience, but hey, I'm losing anyways. Yes, I'm really that's it, friend. Give me Baragon.
All right, next time we'll do Save the Earth.
All right, we'll have to do that on a further investigation.
Which also had these wacky but terribly unfun mini games like Monster Basketball, where you had to pick up a boulder and throw it through the hoop.
That sounds like a nice speed.
Possible. But yeah, when you played story mode, it would mostly be battles, and then just every so often it'd be like Boulder Basketball or like Chase a Beer.
I really want to know narratively what they were going for there, because why are they like not completely sentient? They're brawling, they're destroying a city, and the next they're like on the B-block. Corey, what are we saying?
It's a great question. But again, going back to Destroy All Monsters Melee, I played the GameCube version. That's the one we had growing up. Concept very simple. It's like your classic straightforward fighting game. I know now A lot of fighting games have much deeper, like more integrated story modes. But for anyone who was playing back then, it was basically like you start it and there's like a thin story, and then you fight all the characters, and when you get to the end, you usually unlock some. But that was fine because you were back in the day. You just had the opportunity to play as these monsters for once, which was so exciting. So yeah, I played a ton of this. I went through the story mode enough to unlock everybody, and I played a lot with Lauren and my friends and my dad. But yeah, it's the concept very simple. The monsters are fighting.
I don't know if you guys are ready for this, but the monsters, they're fighting.
And I will give the later games this. They had like kind of like more of a proper setup and aesthetic, like you were in GeForce headquarters and those menus. This one is just like a background of lava rock and a terrible 30-second music loop that plays under everything.
I miss menus like that.
Yeah, what are your feelings on the concept and I guess the aesthetics?
I would say this is very much like ship it out. We know people are going to pick up this game and want to play right away. There is not much of a story, as you said. And I don't even remember you playing through story mode, although I'm sure you did. I guess I just dropped in when everything was unlocked, but it seems more like casual pickup play mode. It's not intense as Super Smash Bros. That's like my best referential point for fighting games. But it's perfect for what we use it for. You have an hour or two with your friends, you pick up the controller, you don't have to watch your friend go through like different modes until you unlock the character you want. You're just doing that good old PvP time, and it's
well, technically you do have to watch them, but this game has cheats, so you just type the cheat in and all the monsters are
there you go. And that is the beauty of video games.
Yes. We should say there is a very like cute and on brand scene at the start of the story mode where the alien leader of the Vortex, who's like a cross between the Keylocks and the Planet X aliens, is like, we've taken over your planet and are controlling all of your monsters. It's like perfectly tuned in to the Showa Godzilla movies, and it's the same one every time. There's no variation. There's no like check-ins with aliens later, which I wish there were, but in and of itself, it's a good cutscene. And there's also a fun like cutscene that plays every time you start the game. That is like, I remember the first time I booted it up, I was like, whoa, this is the most badass thing ever. But moving on to the actual gameplay, it's kind of perfect for me as a casual fighting games player because there's no intense combos. They're all like 3 button presses, and you don't have to like press them at different like tempos or anything. So it's really easy to learn to do all the moves with your favorite monster, and they're all pretty much the way you would want them to be. They all have their own unique ray beams, and poor Agilus doesn't have one, but they gave him a supersonic shout, so he shoots a wind that hurts you. And also when other monsters punch you in the back of it or kick you in the back, they hop around like, wow, pokey.
That always cracked me up watching the fights. Any like small piece of humanity you can put into them, like, oh, that guy just got kicked in the shin.
Yes. It's especially funny for like Destroyo, who's this giant devil bat, and he's like hopping around. He stepped on something pokey.
I stepped on my Lego. Oh no.
What do you think of playing it?
I also like that the combos are simple because I've always struggled to put in combos like that. I tried playing Yakuza once. Now, if you don't like combos, do not play that game. I'll tell you that much. But with the combos being simple enough, the animations are very varied. It's not like they're just kick, punch, flip. You see, sometimes you'll throw someone with your tail, or you can of course like pick them up and initiate different interactions like that, and that keeps you engaged enough so that you're not like, oh, this is just like a punch them, kick them, kill them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Each monster has 3 different types of throws, and when you mash the punch or kick button, it's not just like the same punch animation. That's like the varied up with little bops and animations, and you can fight the way you want. You can get up close and bully them, or you can go from afar and try to hit them with your beams, or you can be the most annoying person and pick up buildings and boulders, and it's just hilarious. You can throw them across the map no matter how far away the other monster is, and they always just fly straight and like smack them in the face.
Like homing missiles inside the buildings.
Yeah. So if you aim well enough, you can just pelt people with buildings. And there's like power-up pickups that are tense to you, like, can I make it? Can I run to the health pickup or the Mothra aid pickup? There's not a lot of variation in terms of the fighting. It's all basically just like go in and knock them out.
But that does like bring up one of my favorite parts of any fighting game is your ability to interact with the environment. As you mentioned, you can pick up these buildings, you can throw them. It's not just this flat backdrop. And the best part of monsters fighting is the destruction they leave behind. They are not in a vacuum. They're not on their own island. There's this impact. It's always been a big message in these monsters movies too. There's environmental impact. So as you fight your foe, not only can you throw those things at them, but the town gets slowly destroyed, which I love to see happen.
That's a great point too. So moving on to our highlights, lowlights, judgment.
Highlight is the destruction.
The destruction. That is fun. Yeah, it's still definitely worth playing. If you want a Godzilla fighting game, this is the least buggy and janky of them. It's obviously, if you go on to play the later 2, Save the Earth, and I don't even remember the name of the Wii one, but whatever, you'll have more monster choices, and it's not like they're horribly broken. They're just
less polished and ugly, and Save the Earth in particular has like really long load times. But I bet somebody's made a mod of it. You know what? Now that I'm thinking of it, they probably like cleaned up the Save the Earth file and added a bunch of monsters. I should have done research for this. Where is the research? I want the numbers. I want to know which games are most revered by the fans.
This is very last minute. But yeah, they're all basically the same, but I'll always go back to Destroy All Monsters Melee first, and it's, like I said, your best pick for a Godzilla fighting game. That's a lot of fun to play with your friends.
I think for me, that is the downside to this game, is if you are alone wanting to have some good Godzilla kaiju game time, this might not hold your attention for too long.
Right.
I think the appeal is having someone next to you to go head to head over and over again with your full arsenal of monsters, and you can just make the matchups of your dreams and really dog on each other in the game. As far as highlights go, putting myself in the perspective of a fan, I think that something that I imagine really matters to people is preserving the personality of an identity of each monster. You don't want them to be acting like little robots, or just like someone made the game and they're like, oh, that's a dragon. Like, no, these are all very specific creatures. And that's reflected in this game. The abilities are spot on. The way that they move and act and interact is all accurate and individual.
Yes. You're making all the best points today.
I know, I'm just like,
stop showing me up.
I'm going to Evangelist Heaven now.
Yeah. All I have to say to end this discussion is, why didn't you guys put Hedorah in any of the games? Look, I'm a Minya fan, but I understand why you didn't put Minya.
We don't need Hedorah. We got the Glog.
Hedorah or the Glog.
With the Glog.
Why wasn't the Glog or Hedorah in any of these fighting games?
Put the Glog in every video game.
He needs to eat Paris. All right, finally, we're talking about one of the newest Godzilla games, Godzilla Battle Line on Android and iPhone. You can still download and play this, of course. They're updating it. Not as much as they used to, and like a lot of the updates are just like, look at this new 4-star monster you're going to have to play all week to unlock. I will say I played a lot in the first few weeks after it came out, but gradually fell off, so this is kind of a coming home to me.
It was the same for me because I did the exact same thing because, as you can see on the cover art of this app, there is Minya involved. Front page, they're not ashamed. They are showing him. So when Ryan downloaded this game, I actually started playing it on my own, just of my own will for a while, and somehow never got Minya in those couple of weeks.
I know, he's like one of the easiest ones to get. Somehow you never got.
They're just haters. They don't want me to have him.
But yeah, we forgot to give the Minyosity rating for Destroy All Monsters.
That's an easy one. You know why we forgot? Because it's 0. It's flat out 0. No mention. I think that I looked up mods for this game because I was so convinced that someone would like Minya as much as me and put him in there, but that obviously doesn't exist. So a resounding 0 of Minyosity.
However, we did find several Minyas for Source filmmakers, so
and Roblox. For some reason, Minya's getting down on Roblox.
Which is very true to his character.
Yes, and in my mind, he would play Roblox, so this is
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll play devil's advocate as best I can for the Minyosity. There's at least a Monster Island level, which has vague connections to Minya's character.
That's really reaching, but okay.
I was just trying to give some interesting.
It's tragic. It's like showing me an empty crib. There was a baby here once.
That's good.
It's me deep, but yes, this mobile game delivered.
Yes, it's the first game where you could be the Minya, kind of
send him into combat.
Yes, so the concept of this one, if you haven't played it, is it's a pseudo real-time strategy auto battler. Basically, each player is a one-on-one unless they've added stuff that I don't know about. Each player has a leader monster at each end of the board, and they have a power you can activate, but it has a limited range usually.
Slowly you're coming closer to each other.
Right.
So you can use it, but...
Right, eventually you'll be able to use it, but you mainly battle by placing different monsters and like defense mechanisms from the various armies in the movies and effects. Like, of course, you can summon your monster pals like Minya, Angulas, the Destroyers, Gigan, just about anyone you can think of, with a few exceptions. And then you can also summon like quick effects, like a launch of missiles, or the train bombs from Shin Godzilla, or the psychic song from this Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. And basically you have an energy bar that fills up over time, and the more powerful summons and effects cost more energy. So you have to kind of figure out your strategy on the fly, and they do a pretty good job changing the balance. So I imagine if you played a lot, you would actually be like, oh, okay, now this is more effective than it used to be, and you could actually vary it up as opposed to like sticking with the same team. But I said too much.
That's right. Let me come over here and make some astounding points.
Yes. What are your thoughts on the concept?
I am a frequenter of mobile games. I've played different levels of them. I played rhythm games. I played games like this that are more combat based. We cannot shy away from the fact that this Battle Line game is also sort of a gacha game, because you do have to roll and explore. That's what they call it, explore to get units. So that's why I was in that Minya-less situation. So you might be sitting tight for a little while, earning the monster of your dream, but I think that it lends itself to interesting play styles. I haven't quite mastered even what I want to do, but since it is energy based, you can figure out, oh, do I want to send out a a bunch of units at once that are really low powered because that's all you can do with that amount of energy if you're sending out somebody at once? Or do I want to wait a really long time, have this legion of monsters coming out at me and send out my big unit? And that I haven't quite mastered, but there is plenty of room for you to make your dream team, figure out your play style, and still feel successful.
Yeah. I remember at the start, the small monster swarms were overpowered, which everyone was frustrated because, like, what's the point of playing the big, like, splashy monsters when they're just gonna get overrun?
Yeah, why am I waiting to launch my 6-powered Mecha Godzilla if all these Kamakuras are gonna just eat his toes? I don't know.
Right, but they solved that pretty quick. So I'm, like I said, I haven't played a lot recently, but the general balance is there. You can't just like win by spamming units. You have to think about what you're gonna do. I like the aesthetics. Well, I do and I don't. I'll talk about the part I like first. Is that
there's a little bit of a mix because, well, I'm sure you'll get into it, but there's some unexpected players that you can recruit to your team.
Well, that especially, but they're all kind of like chibi-fied. They all have big heads, so they're kind of cute, but they're not like so cartoonized that it feels silly if you like taking these things seriously or like distorts what the monsters look like. No, they all have their identities. They just kind of have like bigger heads and smaller bodies, and there's a lot of like fan service, of course, so many details and animations and like stuff to decorate your profile with that are references to all the different eras of movies. However, like the UI of the game is super ugly and generic. It's like you walked into a Japanese supermarket and like the posters are slapped all over the walls with like different glaring colors and fonts.
You don't want to know how many windows I had to X out of just to get to the tutorial. It was a little rough, but it is a gacha game. I think that it is a little bit more on the heavy-handed side as far as the advertising of the pay-to-play elements.
Yeah, you're gonna get bombarded with like, look at what you can do. However, there aren't like forced ads. You can watch ads for extra rewards, but you don't need to. So there's that at least. But yeah, they definitely are like pushing you hard to make a purchase. But at least when I was playing, you didn't really have to. You can get a good chunk of the monsters, including like good units, just by playing. So there's a mix there. I guess we basically covered the gameplay already. One thing is some of the monsters can be your leader. So all the leaders have different strengths and powers you can unleash. Yeah, to talk about one more highlight before I give my judgment, the characters are from all over the place, which might not be to your taste, but I like it. So you get designs from the Showa era, the Heisei era, later films. They've put in chibi Godzilla from the recent anime, so you can have a little cartoon
bumpy head
walking around with his bumpy head. They have characters from Ultraman and Evangelion. They have King Kong, which is a rarity. You hardly ever get King Kong and Godzilla in the same video game. I wish they would add more Showa characters, but they just added Megalon, so I'm hoping they'll continue to put in more from the classic era. And even some of like the helper monsters are fun. Like they have the giant octopus from King Kong versus Godzilla that I was terrified of. They have the Dorats.
Oh yeah, that is one of my favorite units because they're so goofy looking.
Yeah, all they need is Mr. Taco. That's
they need to add him. So tiny on the map. Just panicking.
Yes,
just
panicking.
Adds a sense of urgency to the gameplay.
His sweat drops fly up and hit the monsters.
It slows them.
Or he eggs them on because he was always like cheering for King Kong.
Speed up. Attack speed up.
Anyway, yeah, it's fun. They've done decently well with it. It is kind of sloppy and certainly like very money grubby. So if that stuff bothers you, don't bother. But if you're a fan, you're probably already playing it. But if you haven't, give it a shot. It's fun for a few weeks. Then if you need an idle game in your life to play on your lunch break, maybe this is the one.
For me, I played it all last night on purpose. So I was already a mobile gamer, so it appealed to me. It has that quick gameplay. Like Ryan said, you could do it on lunch break. You're not tied into a game. You're not waiting for things to load or for you to earn your pieces or anything. You can play whenever, and the ranked system is pretty easy to navigate, and it's not frustrating in any way. So it's a good 10 minutes a day, up to an hour a day, depending on how into it you get.
Yes. And again, it's still on those app stores and it's free. So pretty much the only hard sell for our recommendation here is the fighting games, but they're worth seeking out.
It'd be cool if we had a sponsorship and we're like, here's the
code to unlock Mega Minion.
Yes.
I
Oh
wish.
my god. I had my dreams. I didn't get to speak on that part actually. I'll add a little mini addendum.
All right, yes. Well, that wasn't quite done.
Okay, I apologize.
Let's talk about the miniosity of Godzilla battle.
It is a 10 on the miniosity scale. It is so rare that they not only acknowledge Minya as existing, but let him be a part of the gameplay. You get to send him out to fight. He looks adorable. He's perfect to be cheapified. He's very round. He's got his big ol' eyes. I think he looks cute even to a hater.
They really smoothed Minya out.
They smoothed him. He's not cracked and wrinkly anymore.
He got moisturized.
He got some Botox for this new opportunity.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons I'm like, is there a Minya renaissance? Because he's on the title screen. Like, it seems like they're less reluctant to mention him and put him in things.
I know exactly why. It is the Baby Yoda effect. It is. People are okay with looking at things like that now. Which I
Yoda broke boundaries.
He did. He flew so Minya could walk across the battle line screen. But I really do see a lot more appreciation for him. Maybe it's by coincidence. Maybe it's because I'm looking. But on a recent trip, I found a Minya keychain just out in the open at a random store.
He is one of the main characters of Godzilla, which is still going.
Yep. So I think that, like, it's time for him to get his.
Yes. If you haven't looked at Minya in a while, try it again. Look again. He's mature.
I'll face a picture for him for you.
All right. Before we go, I wanted to briefly touch on a few other Godzilla games.
Honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions. So, one that a lot of people know, especially if they're older, is the NES Godzilla game, which I think was the first Western game that was all about Godzilla. It certainly came out around the time of the movie monster game. It's not very fun. It's difficult to control and figure out. It takes hours and hours just to understand what you're really doing and figure out how to do it. It's like part board game, you're moving around a hex and you have to get to the other side, but each hex is a short level you have to walk through and fight.
I was gonna say it's like Fire Emblem turn by turn based, but that doesn't sound like
no
that.
It's only the board game part is turn based. The rest of it is live fights.
Concept.
Yeah, the most interesting thing about it to me is this one of the most popular video game creepypastas of the old era was based on this game, and I was a lurker on the forum where it was first written and shared. So I was
is this where you're gonna admit that you wrote this creepypasta?
No, I wish. No, it was Cosby Def. I don't know what they're up to now. Maybe they're cancelable, frankly. We'll look into it.
Edit this later.
But it appealed to a lot of people. There's so much unique sprite work they did for it. They came up with 2 new appealing monsters. So that's worth checking out. It's pretty good for the art alone. Don't play the game.
Just read the creepypasta.
Yes. And then there's been older Godzilla fighting games prior to Destroy All Monsters Melee, but they were primarily Japanese. So there was one for the Super Nintendo that I emulated a lot when I was like 9, 10 years old. And I enjoyed playing that. The sprite work on that is pretty good. But again, it's basically just a fighting game, so nothing crazy. But I have a great story, and I don't know if you remember this, but one time when me and Lauren were at home alone, I was playing it, but our monitor was getting like super old and crappy, so it would occasionally just turn off on its own. But if you slapped the side of it, it would come back on. So I don't know how I convinced you to do this, but while I was playing, Lauren was like drumming on the sides of the monitor. So it would just like, so the screen was like flickering, but it was mostly on. And then in the middle of playing, the monitor turned off and it wouldn't turn on anymore. And
I don't know whether to blame me or you with that one. Was it the drum concert keeping it alive, or
I think that was a shared blame. I don't even know if we admitted the truth on this. I think we were just like, oh, it just turned off. I
blocked this one out of my mind out of guilt, clearly. But I was always willing to help Ryan, my big bro, get some gaming time, so sounds likely.
That one was kind of fun because they were different backgrounds depending on which monster you were playing as. They were like altered for the different eras of characters, but kind of outmoded by the later fighting games. And then another Super Nintendo Godzilla game was literally called Super Godzilla.
That's the Super Mario collab we've been waiting for.
And that was also super weird. There were a lot of like strange concept Godzilla games. That one was, you had a map and you had to walk Godzilla around the city and find like the objective, which was usually an enemy monster. And then there was a fighting game, but it wasn't like a normal fighting game. Like you got different options depending on how close you were to the other monster and like how many attacks you blocked. It was terrible. It was really, really bad and hard to learn. But it does have like weird influences on the later Heisei movies because it came out in the early 90s. And the main enemy at the end is Bagan, which if you're a super deep cut Godzilla fan, Bagan was like this monster that they had designed and planned for Godzilla to fight in so many movies, and then they always like bumped him for whatever reason. I guess he was just like the backup monster, but he was finally in this. And I don't know if this is still the case, but in the mid 2000s there were a bunch of Godzilla fans who were like obsessed with Bagan. They're like, when's Bagan gonna be in a movie? Why doesn't anyone like Bagan? So he's in that. And then also like at the end of the game, Godzilla gets transformed into Super Godzilla to fight Bagan. And the design of Super Godzilla is almost exactly Space Godzilla. He's blue. Ooh. He has like a crest on his head. He has little mandibles on the side of his mouth. I don't know why they basically took that design for Space Godzilla, apart from that movie being kind of rushed maybe. But it's very odd. So yeah, that's my rant on Super Godzilla.
I just want to know if anyone's listening is a Bagan super fan.
Shout out to
Baganators.
The Wendy's Baganator.
Yeah, who was ready for the Godzilla meal at Wendy's?
They should do that.
I know.
All right. Well, it was kind of an anticlimactic ending, but thank you so much for
bacon, okay.
Thank you for joining me and talking Godzilla video games with me, dear sister.
Anytime. I had a nice time exploring games that I'm new to and games that are old, refreshers for me, and I got something out of each of them.
Yeah, let us know what your favorite Godzilla games are, which ones we should have played, your thoughts on the ones we did play. Send us that in an email or a YouTube comment or whatever. We'd love to see it and read it. But in the meantime, keep spreading the word of Godzilla.
And keep gaming.
Godzilla Evangelists, a Geek Stew Network podcast, is brought to you by me, Ryan Sargent, and my friends Joanna Brodecki and Sam Schlenker. This episode was edited by Brogan Malloy. All our incredible music is composed by Robert Mai, and our wonderful artwork is drawn by Cassidy Stone. Special thanks to our families, friends, and the wonderful artists who made the movies we talked about today. Godzilla Evangelists is a satirical, critical work not affiliated or endorsed by Toho, Legendary Pictures, or anyone behind the Godzilla series. Visit our website at godzillaevangelists.com. We're also on Twitter at GodzillaCast and Instagram at GodzillaEvangelists. If you prefer to listen to us online, we have a YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you join us next time. In the meantime, keep spreading the word of Godzilla.